they really want this, as a lot of NBA analysts have looked at the Toronto Raptors offseason, the moves Masai Ujiri's made, and they're trying to weigh in on their opinions in terms of what the Toronto Raptors could do. And Jakob Poeltl is at the center of a lot of discussions about trades and the future of this organization. But specifically, this NBA analyst over at Bleacher Report is really demanding the Toronto Raptors fortify their front court, get younger in terms of the moves that they make, and name 3 potential targets for the Toronto Raptors to go after in the trade market this upcoming deadline, especially if things get messy at the start of the season. So we're going to dive into who these trade targets are, whether or not it makes sense for the Toronto Raptors to really to dive into one of these moves, and whether or not it makes sense to the team, because frankly, I like Jakob Poeltl, but we are a young rebuilding team. And does he really fit the timeline? Well, we'll debate all that. But before we dive into any of that, folks, again, if you're a part of the over 50% of viewers that haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button so you stay up to date with everything regarding this Toronto Raptors team. The season just around the corner here now at this point. But let's dive into this report, because Greg Schwartz of Bleacher Report came out and named some trade targets for the Toronto Raptors, and he's really leaning into the team, moving for a big man. The first guy was kind of on that list in terms of discussions, not on Okongwu. It's Nic Claxton, who's long been linked to the Toronto Raptors in different reports and different discussions and fan trades and stuff. But Nic Claxton, Brooklyn Nets are resetting the franchise of the Brooklyn Nets. That's who we should target. The Raptors are resetting their franchise around Scottie Barnes, and it means getting younger, something the Raptors have yet to do at the center position, with Jakob Poeltl, who is 28 years old, Kelly Olynyk, who's 33, and at the top of the depth chart. Nic Claxton, who's 25, can't be traded until December 15th after the agreed upon new 4-year, close to $100 million extension he received over the summer, and one that should age beautifully as it drops a few million each season. He's a good rebounder, shot blocker, who will be an anchor for the Toronto Raptors defense, and frankly, I don't see any Raptors fan, I don't see really any person out here looking at a potential of getting Nic Claxton, bringing him into the team and saying, hey, he doesn't really fit. He's not really what the Toronto Raptors should go after. We can take a look at his stats in terms of what he's able to provide. Nic Claxton's a guy that averaged 12 points per game, 10 rebounds, 2 assists, over 2 blocks per night. Not too many threes by any stretch of the imagination, but finishes around the rim, can get in that dunker spot, and it's just a guy, there's a reason Toronto Raptors fans have wanted him on the team as a role target, as a guy that can run those pick and rolls, can be a lob threat, because again, at the center position, there's 2 real ways you can space the floor. You can either be a guy that's out there, like Kelly Olynyk, shooting threes, knock it down long jump shots, or, if you're diving to the rim, if you sort of dive to the basket, in order for that help defender to be able to not have to stay glued to the big man and not be able to help on specific drives, so they're from RJ Barrett, IQ, Scottie Barnes, or any of these types of players, he has to be a lob threat. A guy like IQ has to be able to just chuck up the basketball the same way he did to Mitchell Robinson over there with the New York Knicks and dunk it down. And while Jakob Poeltl certainly can finish around the rim, he's not a lob threat, and he's obviously not a jump shooter. Nic Claxton isn't either. But basically, Claxton brings that sort of, lob threat. He's on a really good contract, and essentially he fits the timeline the Toronto Raptors want to do. How realistic is Nic Claxton as a prospect? Well, it's the Nets are rebuilding. I feel like Nic Claxton's kind of the one guy that they want to hold on to in terms of the future, and the fact that his contract goes down, it fits the Nets timeline too. So that's might be a harder trade to actually facilitate for the Toronto Raptors. But the next guy on the list is probably more gettable, one of the more gettable guys on this specific list, and that is Jonathan Isaac, who is 26 years old. He's an elite defender given his size and versatility, and had the best defensive estimated plus minus in the entire NBA last season. And he's become a legit floor spacer on offense, knocking down 38% of his threes over 58 games for the Orlando Magic. And frankly, that's the most encouraging stat. Not the 3-point shooting, not the defense, not any of that crazy stuff, but it's that Jonathan Isaac was able to play 58 games last year. And that doesn't even seem like a lot. In an 82-game season, it still feels like, you're out for a while. But that's some of the most games Jonathan Isaac has ever played in a season recently. And the fact that he's able to stay on the court out there indicates maybe he's getting healthier and stuff. But again, he does have that long injury history over the course of his career. But frankly, it is true. He did have a phenomenal defensive season last year and did improve as a 3-point shooter. His role was more limited. He's more coming off the bench, but a guy that, you go down to Magic Digest, check out Patrick over there, Magic Digest, but he's in love with Jonathan Isaac's game out there on the court, right? 7 points per game, 4.5 rebounds per night. Again, can really, 1.2 blocks in limited minutes. Shot 38% from the 3-point line. Just a guy, and shot 46% on corner threes. For a 6'10 big, shooting 46% on corner threes is an absolutely ridiculous stat. And given the fact, again, it still is probably a buy low because you're not sure at his injury history, how it will impact him moving forward into the future, and these types of things, I think he's a reasonable sort of trade option. For the Orlando Magic that are probably looking to buy, that are looking to improve their roster, who knows what, they do have a few centers down there, Wendell Carter, they have Wagner, they have a few players that, Jakob Poeltl might not fit, but maybe a Bruce Brown going down there for Jonathan Isaac could be an interesting return, but it would be a risk with the injury history he has sustained. And what if, you increase his minutes, you increase his run? Would he even be able to play that 58 minutes or 58 games? That's something you have to look at. I know he also gets memed off the court with his kind of videos he's doing with, Brett Cooper or who these people are, but I don't really care. All I care about is how good he is out there on the basketball court. Can he defend? Can he do these types of things? And Jonathan Isaac, healthy, would be a really nice fit with his elite defense and his floor spacing. But again, injuries are the biggest concern. But, this article, Greg Schwartz really wants the Toronto Raptors to get one of those shot blocking athletic big men. And it continues with the last guy on this list. I already snuck a peek of him out there in these graphics. But Onyeka Okongwu. The Atlanta Hawks buried on the bench behind Clint Capella for the past 4 years. Okongwu is ready for a starting job and would thrive as the rim-protecting center in Toronto. The 23-year-old averaged 16 points per game and 8.5 rebounds and shot 66% in his 8 starts for the Atlanta Hawks last season and has the athleticism to switch on defensively onto nearly any position. This is according to Greg Schwartz. And personally, I really like Onyeka Okongwu's game. I picked him up in fantasy for the past 2 years because I thought, hey, this is the season the Hawks get rid of Clint Capella and then he becomes a starter and stuff. It hasn't happened, but again, I completely agree. Watching this guy play, even though you look at his sort of intangible size and stuff, is 6'8", but gets up there, he blocks shots, 1.1 blocks per game coming off the bench, 10.7 rebounds, is a guy that's just waiting to really burst out onto the scene. Again, isn't much of a three-point shooter, doesn't shoot him at a high volume, isn't as bad of a shooter as a guy like Nic Claxton or Jakob Poeltl, but so has some type of touch, but still is much more of a even though he doesn't have the size, and Nic Claxton 6'10" has longer arms, is more of a lob threat than Onyeka Okongwu. He does have that skill set in his game. He's more mobile, and on the defensive end can just really bring it. Has that size, has that strength. Again, is more of like that Bam Adebayo-esque center potential wise. No, definitely not there yet. But to play that type of role comparatively to Nic Claxton, who's one of those more lanky sort of big men. So Onyeka Okongwu, again, if we don't end up trading for Christian Koloko or signing a Christian Koloko at some point over the next little while, we do have Bruno Fernando, we do have Kelly, we do have Jakob Poeltl out there in the front court, and I want to make this all to say, right? Greg Schwartz is making the argument for why some of these guys fit, why it makes sense for the Toronto Raptors to make one of these moves happen for more athletic, a younger sort of center. And if the Raptors are tanking, it makes sense to sort of, if you can especially buy low on an Isaac or a Okongwu, then you should really, really go for it. But Jakob Poeltl is still good. And I'm still hopeful this Toronto Raptors team is starting off this season capable, right? Jakob Poeltl, 11 points, 9 rebounds. He's on the team. He's on a reasonable contract as well. And he's not that old, right? The guy is going to be 29 going into next season. Like, he is not some over-the-hill, just washed old man that we have currently on this team. He's a player that can facilitate out there in the mid-post area. His positional defense is great. His touch around the rim is really, really solid, even though there are games where he does miss a few of those bunnies around the basket. But frankly, I'm happy to go in the season with Jakob Poeltl. I want to see how the team does. I want to see how the Toronto Raptors perform in those first 10, 20 games with a really tough schedule. See if we're competing. See if we're getting some W's. Because again, even if we're 500 against that bloodbath of a schedule we have at the start of the season, I wouldn't be shocked if a team of Immanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Scottie Barnes, Jakob Poeltl, and then a yoked Gradey Dick out there in the starting lineup. Maybe that team gets some W's. Maybe you start shocking some people here now at this point. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you want to see this happen as much as the Bleacher Report guys do? Let me know. You guys are the best. I'm signing it out. Cheers.